Hello, my name is Fola Alade, and I will be presenting a historical timeline and review of research in healthcare, a critical analysis project. A little bit of an introduction. In bioethics, it's defined as professional integrity, which focuses on the ethics issues, and it delivers direct patient care as well as the conduct of healthcare research involving human research subjects. Bioethics involves medical, research, environmental, and public health ethics. And the research ethics focuses on the issues pertaining to the conduct of research. Traditionally, the focus of research ethics has been ethical principles formulated around biomedical research. Going over the historical timeline in research ethics, you can see that the role of human research subjects has been highly controversial over the years, and it has been troubled with danger and suffering. One of those studies included the Statiki experiment from 1932 to 1972, where researchers studied the effects of untreated syphilis in about 400 African American men without providing them with effective available treatment. And this was stated in an article by Resnick 2019. When you get into the 1940s and 50s, World War II occurs, and morally adherent and unethical research is also conducted by German scientists. And this is done at concentration camps where prisoners of war and prisoners that were brought to the concentration camps were under biomedical studies. And in 1947, we have the Nuremberg Code, which was established. The Nuremberg Code specifically states, as a result of the war, a 10-point guideline that was developed for the principles and research on human subjects, as well as provides a foundation for informed consent. And as if you look at the all 10 principles, you see primarily voluntary consent of human subjects is absolutely essential. And later, the experiment should be conducted only by scientifically qualified persons, as well as during the course of the experiment, human subjects should be at the liberty to bring the experiment to the end. Moving forward in the historical timeline, you see in the 1960s through 1970s the Milgram obedience study, which was conducted in 1963 by Dr. Milgram at Yale University. You have the Helsinki Declaration, which provides guidelines for clinical research and for the protection of research subjects, as stated by Sparks 2002, and the Belmont Report, which was issued by the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research. And this provides ethical guidelines for the principles of respect, beneficence, and justice, also stated in an article by Sparks 2002. I would like to go a little bit further into the critical analysis of Milgram's obedience study. In 1963, Stanley Milgram is a psychologist at Yale University. He is examining the justifications for the act of genocide offered by those accused during the Nuremberg war criminal trials. Their defense is primarily based off obedience, and they specifically state that they were following the orders from their superiors, and that is why they acted in the immoral capacity of their experiments. He conducts an electrical shock test for his experiment in order to understand the relationship between authority and obedience. As part of the procedure, male volunteers are recruited, and an authority figure, which is listed as a teacher, instructs the participants to administer an electric shock every time the learner makes a mistake. The voltage is increased by varying levels of shock each time the learner gets a question wrong, from 15 volts, which is listed as slight shock, to 450 volts, which is listed as dangerous, severe shock. The study concludes that the majority of the participants are willing to morally take wrong actions when following the instruction of authority. All participants reached 300 volts, and 65% of the participants continued to 450 volts. In analyzing Milgram's obedience study, you can see that this case was conducted before procedural ethics is established, and procedural ethics is established in the 1970s. Procedural ethics involves seeking approval from a relevant ethics committee to undertake human subject research. However, in research ethics, professional codes of ethics and conduct are articulated. When you look at the key issues, you see that the study involves deception and psychological harm to the participant. Participants are unaware that the learner is Dr. Milgram's confederate, and some participants report psychological distress, including increased levels of stress, signs of tension, such as trembling and sweating, and stuttering. When you look at the regulatory breaches, it can be further described in the Belmont Report. The Belmont Report is a significant contribution to the transformation of research ethics guidelines. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services 2018 states the reports provide basic ethical principles for biomedical and behavioral research ethics. And the report summarizes guidelines for respect for the persons, which include individual autonomy and the protection of individuals with reduced autonomy, beneficence, which involves maximizing benefits and minimizing harm, and justice, which provides equitable distribution of research risk and benefits, as listed again by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services 2018. In the 1980s and 90s, there's a more sophisticated projects occurring, such as the Human Genome Project of 1990. The U.S. launches this project, which is a $20 billion effort, in order to map and sequence the human genomes, and this helps to better understand the frameworks of DNA. And as the Genome Project expands, there's a need for ethical guidelines to incorporate the ethical issues surrounding genome sequencing and advanced genetics, as stated by Sparks 2002. Further on to 2000 to 2010, you see the World Health Organization develop operational guidelines. These guidelines provide international guides for the ethics committee that facilitates and supports ethical review of biomedical research. And an example of an ethics committee in the US would be the Institutional Review Board, IRB. Overall, when you look at the historical timeline from the 1900s to today, you see the historical timeline of the evolution of guidelines regulating research in healthcare is an evolving and ongoing process. It's important to critically analyze cases related to ethical issues in healthcare research in order to provide the best medical care and research available. Bioethical principles and guidelines help to establish a framework for ethical practice. Thank you so much for listening. My references are provided below.